Hello no, we can't say that. Good day.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Good night.
Well, okay, that was easy.
Good evening.
Carmudgeon Show. This is the latest episode of it. That's Jason Cammisa. I'm Derek Tam-Scott.
Today we're talking about a bunch of things. That's per usual. We have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, but we're going to
Wing it.
force right through it. Today we're going to talk about the ultimate comparison test I did with the Tesla Model 3 Performance and BMW M3. If you haven't seen it on YouTube, it totally surprised me. The outcome was not what I expected at all. And probably not what you expected either, and for good reason.
And a little bit of Radwood recap.
I had a Radwood visit, and the Carmudgeon Show is sponsored by Vredestein Tires.
Yes, we are delighted to have them on board. I am a longtime listener, first-time caller. Just kidding. Vredestein user. I first became aware of Fredestein, I think, this was at least 10 years ago, because...
Really?
What?
That long ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you not?
No. Probably.
So I became aware of them because they make the Sprint Classic. And 10 years ago, I was buying a lot of Porsche 912s that we'd sort of rehab and then resell. And the Vredestein Sprint Classic was like the right sort of vintage look, and they were a lot less expensive than the Michelins. And so we were just doing it because we were, flipping cars and wanted something that looked right and it would fit on the car, but wasn't as expensive as Michelins. And that was how I became aware of them. And then I started driving the cars around, and I was like, oh, these are actually quite great. And they're available in all these different sizes. And then I was like, I like these people. And then I assumed it was just like this sort of vintage tire thing, and it was like a little hack that was useful for my 15-inch, 4.5-inch wide wheels, and that was kind of where it was for a while. And then I think probably from you at some point, you were.
Well, it all exploded when we did the E30 versus 2.316.
Yeah, with the Sprint Classics
thing, and I don't remember how. Oh, I went on Tire Rack and I just saw that they had this 205/55/15 fitment, which at that point there was nothing.
It was like super close to extinction.
Yeah, there was one other tire, and so I reached out.
And it's the default size for the both 190 Cosworth and the E30 M3.
And so I reached out and I said, I had actually spoken with a PR guy who worked for this great guy named Roger. And I'm like, hey, any chance that you guys would want to participate in this? Because these are two privately owned cars. I owned one and a friend owned the other, but privately owned cars, and they both have new tires on them, but they're very different. I'd love to settle the debate about which one of these cars is actually quicker if they were on the same tire, if that sort of offers period levels of grip. I mean, so the tire that we used was Sprint Plus, which is a summer tire, but not like a max performance crazy like our compound basically. And I thought it would be a really good match. Had no idea. So we threw them on the car, and I thanked Vredestein for it, and they were great. They sent us two sets. Randy loved them because the first thing we did with brand new tires was send Randy out and have him set the lap time and then record his impressions and built in script. And then they both held up to an entire day. Both cars, the tires held up to an entire day of drifting, driving like complete imbeciles. And we're like, where do these things come from? Looked at, saw that they were reasonably priced, and then I loved them on the road. Yeah. And then that turned into, I have Sprint Classics on the Ferrari, and I have Quattracs on both the e-Golf's winter wheels and the Cabby. And now they're sort of expanding their US lineup into like, there's the High Track Plus. I think there's one of the high performance one that I'm hoping to try now on the e-Golf's sort of summer tires. And who knew? Like, I didn't know. I'm like, tires are tough because, you can just, every car is going to be different and we drive them differently. But every time I look at Tire Rack, I sort of look at when it says Tire Rack, test it. I go back and I would encourage everyone to use that research tool. But I'll look and like they'll say Vredestein, and the one thing that always appears in there for like little bullet points that sum it all up is like a tire that does fucking everything great. Yeah. And so if they keep doing that well on an instrumented sort of objective test, I'm just going to keep buying them. So.
Yeah, I've been consistently impressed with them, and it serves like in both of these cases, our first contact points with them. I think they're serving a particular niche that is underserved, and as Radwood cars start to return to like sort of being used and collected and sort of fawned over, then it's really great to have the Sprint Plus, especially. Yeah. So I'm very keen.
Excited about it. By the way, also, I believe this episode is going live in November still. And There was something that I was supposed to say. Happy to do it because I believe there is a don't worry. Fredestein is still offering $140 back on a purchase of 4 tires before the end of the month. So if you guys are hearing this before the end of November 2024, you can absolutely get $140 off. Tire Rack, I know, offers that. And by the way, demand a better tire.
Demand Vredestein.
Good stuff. And now I demand the clap.
Jason demands the clap. And more on this episode of the Carmudgeon Show. Got to go.
Gotta
go.
That was what GTG means for you?
Yeah, and on AIM.
GTG I thought was a get together.
No, when you would say it when you were like, oh, you have to sign off. I gotta go.
No, it's TTFN.
Ta-ta for now? No, those are synonymous. No. GTG, gotta go.
Well, I'm glad we started this episode out this way. And while we're on nonsensical,
we're doing the opposite of going.
I want to know if you know, there's one term, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I have to ask first before I use it. Are you familiar with the term size queen?
Never heard of it.
Really?
I'm just kidding. Tell me all about it.
This is an individual who prioritizes large things. And we have a friend who is a size queen in that when he made this Carmudgeon Show thing for us, which he did in his spare time in addition to a whole bunch of other cool stuff, probably never imagined that it would be the only piece of flair that we have on our table. And
there's some flair that's not on the table too.
Well, there's shit everywhere, but that's the difference. This is flair. You remember like you go to TGI Fridays and they were like...
This is like a fixture in the movie Office Space. I think it was Office Space?
Right.
Where they have the pins on the vests and that becomes like a proxy for sort of the corporate retail restaurant, like droning, unpleasant service industry work. Yeah, there's pieces of flair.
Yeah. That was like TGI Fridays. They had like, I think it was Fridays. It was one of those terrible chain restaurants where they were allowed to have like pins on their suspender and it was called flair. Anyway, this is our flair and this is being replaced.
Oh, is it?
Because said size queen, who doesn't want to be thanked publicly or named really, that is a little jack stand. I don't know if the camera can see this. How cute. It's a little jack stand. And hold on. Oh, another one. We have 2 jack stands. And then...
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. A new
Carmudgeon logo that's freaking enormous.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's enormous.
Okay, well, it's above average.
Yes, that's true. We can have small, medium, and large. Jake, can you flash the one that's on the back wall? Anyway, so we have a new Carmudgeon logo.
Well, it's the same Carmudgeon logo, it's just bigger.
Oh, yes.
That looks bigger than average.
Pretty cool. This is a Instagram follower who we both met. Who just
I thought you were going to make an air conditioning joke.
He does own an HVAC company. And it is warm in here right now, thanks to our...
Despite HVAC. It being positively frosty outdoors by our Californian standards. I think I saw a number starting with 4 for the exterior temperature.
Yeah, it was 39 last night, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This individual who owns an HVAC company actually procured a 4-ton HVAC unit, like air conditioning, furnace, gas, and electric hybrid for us to use in here, pulled it off the roof of a building in a job, refurbished it for us, and then was going to give it to us for free because you heard me bitching that I was cold and hot and whatever, I'm miserable in here. And our lovely landlord, who is a friend of mine, was being a monumental pain in the ass.
Was a friend of yours?
Is technically, although that strained our friendship, did not want anything on the roof. So we fought and fought and fought. And the compromise was putting exactly the amount of weight on this roof that I would have with that 4-ton unit.
Capacity.
It's capacity, not weight.
Yes.
Exactly the amount of weight with 2 new mini split units that cost me a lot versus free. And now this esteemed listener / creative person is stuck with a fucking 4-ton HVAC unit that he rebuilt and went through. And I feel terrible.
The tons of cooling is about, it actually has to do with blocks of ice or the ability to melt ice or something like that. I have to look it up. I'm sure he could rattle it off the top of his head. But that has to do with like actual tons of ice, I think.
I thought it was just 24,000 BTU.
Well, that's how much BTU it takes to, something, a ton of ice or whatever. I don't know.
It makes perfect sense.
We are car people, not HVAC people, very clearly. Yes. This is a car podcast. We are going to update on Radwood.
Well,
SoCal.
so this actually brings me down. So this I received on my way down to Radwood when I stopped by his shop in the 850 CSI. So my deal was we went filming, and then I brought the CSI with me and brought the CSI to his shop. He gave me this. The CSI broke in the shop.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I panicked and had 3.7 heart attacks. And then because the car was going to Radwood the next morning, and then it was going to Jay Leno's garage the morning after that because Jay wanted to drive it and do a video on it, which, surprise, upcoming. Also upcoming E30 video. He did that too, but that's a different story. And anyway, said Saint, who did this and the air conditioning unit also, let me use his lift. So what happened was first of all, the 850 was a magnificent cruiser down to LA. Absolutely comfortable. No, Randy Popes was driving it. He was so excited to drive it down. He said nothing but nice things to me and then insulted it to Anthony, and it got back to me, and Randy turned white when I called him on it. And he was like, well, I didn't mean it. I'm like, Randy.
What, did he say that it was heavy or it had no structure?
No structure. Yeah. Why did he say that to you too?
I was there when he said it to Anthony.
What else did he say?
That's all I remember.
Oh, you full of shit, aren't you?
Yes, be right back.
Seriously, I mean, you can anything. I didn't engineer the fucking car. I mean, that's the joke.
That's all I remember.
No, he apparently said that it had no structure, which was funny because I got into it after we did a video where we drag raced a bunch of very heavy 4,000 to 5,400 pound modern, very expensive cars. And when I got into the CSI, my comment was, holy shit, this car feels like it's made out of tissue paper. And Anthony was like, yeah, Randy said it had no structure. And I'm like, did he now? What else did he say? And he's like, nothing. I'm like, Randy, what did you say? And he was like, nothing. I'm like, what do I care? But anyway, we did drive it down to LA. And we get out of the car at Willow. And he looks right at the front tires and goes, you haven't tracking this thing? Yeah, like I'm going to track a 4,135 pound car, by the way. We weighed it. 4,185, 40.
I think it was, I guessed 4,140, and
I think it was 4,184.
42 something, low 42s. We were right. If you split our guesses, that was the exact weight of the car. I do remember that.
I'm not going to track. I mean, maybe once I'll do a lap or two, but, and I look and the outside shoulders of the tires are gone, like worn. And this is 400 miles.
Since the tires were new.
They weren't new, but they were fine 400 miles ago.
Right. When you put those wheels on, because you bought those wheels and they came with tires. Yeah. Okay.
And so I called Dwayne, who's a guy who owns a shop directly at Willow Springs. And I'm like, do you have an alignment rack? And he's like, yeah. And we all took one look at it. And he was like, just order new tires right now. That was a $1,400 tire rack bill. But I got Pilot Sport 4S's for it. And I no longer have 3/4 of an inch of toe in.
Huh.
It's amazing. The thing got 19.6 miles per gallon and actually handled really well. I can't believe that it did, given that the front wheels were basically looking at each other. Mm-hmm. So that happened. That was quite the expensive day. And then I get to HVAC shop, and Dwayne, I think, might have pulled. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden the shift boot came broken, and I looked and the clips were broken, and I'm like, oh no, Jay Leno's gonna drive the car. I need to have it at least present properly. So we pulled the shift boot off and just Velcroed underneath it and sort of glued it down just to make sure everything was, stayed put until I can fix it correctly. Put the shift knob back on it, and on those you sort of press them, tamp them down. So I was on my way leaving to pick up a friend at the airport, and I'm like, okay, thank you so much for everything, whatever, really appreciate the Velcro and the Carmudgeon logo. And I start the car and go to smack the shift knob down, and the whole shifter goes.
Yeah, because there's a ball cup thing that holds it all in there.
Was.
Was
a ball cup thing. Yeah, held the whole shifter linkage.
So did it break the bushing or?
I threw up in my mouth 6 times and I'm like, oh God, I can't, the car's now not drivable and the only way to shift would be to lift the whole linkage up, shift a gear and then let it fall back down. And it's just going to throw itself out of gear. And I'm like, oh fuck, I got to cancel Radwood. I got to cancel all the shit. And this unnamed person, I don't know why he doesn't want to be, he doesn't want credit. He's just that nice, I guess. He has a bend pack. But a sort of half height bend pack. So I got under the car, removed the entire exhaust.
You have to remove the exhaust?
Of course you do.
And an E28, you just pop it out.
E28 has 2 exhaust pipes that go down the offset. Yeah. This has 2 massive exhaust pipes with an X pipe, and the cats are right there.
And the E28, it's very easy to do that job.
Yeah. So the entire exhaust had to come off, which I'm happy to say that on my 30.8-year-old car was cake. I mean, this underside of this car looks brand new.
A piece of cake.
Yes. And exhaust came off, and it was just a bushing that popped out, but it probably hadn't been properly installed in the first place. So it took us a while.
Could be elderly.
No, because it's a rubber bushing. So there's, for lack of a better term, there's an aluminum dick that sticks off the back of the shifter assembly, and then there's a bushing that goes onto that sort of peg, and then a galvanized sleeve, I guess, that goes on top of that. And the sleeve has slots in it, and the chassis of the car has 2 tabs that stick in, and you sort of push it in and it makes a satisfying little, it can't really fall out unless the tabs have been splayed apart or some other reason. I think it just wasn't installed properly. So we got it in, took us a while because the bushing, I think, is just clocked a little bit within that sleeve. Because it kept popping back out. We get it in, tug on it, and pop back out. And so finally we got it in, got it secured, and then we put a hose clamp around it. Because I'm not taking any chance that, Jay Leno gets in the car and he's like, oh, this thing's really fucked up. It's really fucked up, Jason. Oh, our lights just got very bright, and there's a reverse camera. Are we about to win the Publishers Clearinghouse Prize or something? What the hell is going on? Jake is
on the corner of the... of the workbench there.
We'll just continue on. Now everyone gets to see your beautiful purple manual dogleg AMG
against
motor,
their will, whether they want to or not.
6-liter wagon. Yeah, that thing is so hot. Oh, there we go. So anyway, that was my stressful begin to the whole thing. I did take a picture of the 850's engine next to Jay's McLaren F1.
Oh, yes, perfect. Because the S70 pairing.
Yeah. Of course, everyone wants to point out they don't share a single part.
Yes,
and you know
they
what?
don't.
I don't care.
But they do share letters and numbers.
They share a name. Mm-hmm. That's enough for me. I mean, it's kind of a joke.
Okay.
Radwood SoCal was amazing, as it always is. And I gave out 2 awards. One is the IDF.
I drive that home.
I drive that home award, which I gave to a Ford Escort Cosworth, owned by a guy named, I believe it was Joe. Very cool guy. Car's gorgeous, and I've never driven one. Interestingly enough, 6 days later, I was at a car show here in San Francisco, and there was a gold Escort Cosworth. And I'm like, oh, is this one of the Sun International cars that were homologated and federalized? And he's like, I am Sun. Huh. The actual guy.
So the answer is yes. Yes. They did Renault R5s also, I believe.
They did R5s, and there was another one, something else that they did. Anyway, super cool. And so that happened. And then
what was the other award?
The other award was a Vredestein Tires award. And so Fredestein, as you guys now know, they're a sponsor of this podcast. They also sponsor Radwood, and they wanted to give out a free set of tires to someone who was deserving. And so basically my Radwood was ruined by me having to kneel around and crawl around on my fucking hands and knees for the entire show. As a size queen, I can't even do that. Looking for the worst tires, the worst rubber I could find, basically.
Oh, really? So that was the way they decided. The person who drove on the sketchiest tires?
It wasn't the sketchiest, but the car that was the most deserving of it. Meaning that, if somebody had old tires or somebody had the wrong... The brief that I was told me, not from the Fredestein guys, but through our internal Haggerty people, was just find the car that needs period correct tires, for example, because Fredestein now has a push for 80s and 90s tire sizes. And so there were a bunch of 944s there. Yours was there.
Mine was there.
You were absent.
I was not. My car was there. I was not.
That's true. Car was already
on Fredestein tires, which they supplied to us so that we could...
You could. Don't leave me out of this. I mean,
we meaning my co-founders and I could not have ancient tires that were like Arizonans or something. I don't even know. I haven't even heard of them. And it's a sort of weird size. They're a little bit hard to come by. So
there were
good ones.
It would be a bad look, because Carmudgeon Show is sponsored by Vredestein. Carmudgeon host Derek Tam-Scott injured in an accident where 4 of his tires exploded all at once because he hit 30 miles an hour whilst they were 29 million years old. So I crawled around and I found a bunch of cars that like were in dire need of tires, but they didn't have like an appropriate fitment. Like I wasn't going to gift somebody like with like a Mustang or something, some like snow tires in LA. Like that's just not the correct thing to do. But I finally found it. And it's an 86 Toyota Supra Turbo. I may get this backwards, but the fronts were Continental something. The rears were Continental. I didn't even know what the hell they were. The fronts were Pilot Sport All Seasons. They were, to say cracked would be an insult to Cracker Jacks, for example, or the things that are cracked. They were fucking crackle glassed with like circumferential fractures and very old. And they're all about to turn 20. So this Supra. And so I of course don't tell anyone what I'm doing. They're like, what the fuck is this idiot doing looking at my tires? So I'm like, who's responsible for this disaster? And this guy's like, me. And I'm like, do you drive this car? And he was like, yeah, like 2,000 miles a year. And I'm like, he says, oh, not much. And I think, all right, the car's condition, like it looks like it's got 6 miles on it. And he's like, yeah, 2,000 miles a year. I'm like, oh. He's like, yeah, I was going on a big road trip. I thought, I said, okay, you're not leaving. And when I call you up on stage, I need you to come and can I fucking torment you? And he was like, sure. He was a total good sport about it. So at the end, I called him up on stage and I'm like, he had a t-shirt made that was a replica of the gauges in his car. And I'm like, that is so cool that the EMS workers are going to chop that fucking shirt in half trying to save your life when you almost die in a car accident. Are you kidding me? And so he got a set of Quattrax. I remember a perfectly fitting car for period correct Super Turbo, and I was very happy. And I told him I will use my own Haggerty Drivers Club flatbed towing to get you home. I don't want you to get hurt. And he's like, no, I'm local. And I almost asked, what does local mean? Like 200 miles? But he was like, no, I'm really local. I don't even have to get on the freeway. Okay, good. Don't.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
We recently bought a car that had it was a clown shoe, and the front tires had 2003 date codes.
That's pretty good.
Which was concerning. Yeah.
When I bought the Mercedes, the 2316, it had, I think the tires were 18 years old on it.
You know what's really fun is when you buy a car that doesn't have date codes because they haven't been invented yet.
Yeah. But I maxed that car out. I mean, I held at 143 miles an hour for quite a bit. But it just had passed TÜV. There was this car never saw the sun. It was stored inside all the time, and they looked fine, which I'm told is not an indication that they are fine. But I didn't die, and the tires still look great when I was done, and I did put new tires on it the second it got home.
Okay.
Anyway, so that was Radwood as always is fun. We don't have to go into the details of all the amazing cars there because it's just every Radwood is like that.
Yeah, our service wagon was there also, which was already on Vredestein tires, which I mounted because they're the ones with the Giugiaro design sidewalls. And so I was looking for, the car has Sportline wheels, which are 1/2 inch wider than the standard fitment for that car. And so I was looking for it needs to be 205s instead of 195s on the car. So the Quattrax are on that car, looking very cool. I think it completes the vibe of that car, which has a sort of like a interesting presentation anyway. So yes, those cars had both attended. I did not. I was doing a track day up here.
In what car?
GTI.
What tires are on that?
4S's.
Oh, okay. So it's actually those are the tires that squeal incessantly on your car and no other car ever.
Yeah, they definitely talk. I think that car is maybe just bound to. The instructor was like, I can make this thing rotate. And I was like, oh, can you? Mm-hmm. And then he was like, afterwards, he was like, I cannot make this thing rotate.
Yeah. Randy Popst was in your car or drove your car? No, he said he used to race
a Mark V.
Yeah. And he said they tried everything when they were racing that car and just absolutely couldn't get it to rotate no matter what. And yeah, they were doing serious mods to the car and they still couldn't get it to rotate.
Yeah, I mean, like adjustable lower control arms and camber plates and running 50 pounds in the back and whatever.
Yeah. I tried. I was also
unable to get the car to rotate.
Yeah. I mean, I've drifted Camrys for film. But anyway.
For film.
I'm a professional idiot as opposed to just an Instagram idiot. But that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about the Icons episode that is not an Icons episode.
It is the
tread
to tread. I quite enjoyed that. I thought that was really clever.
The tread to tread dig?
Yes.
Okay.
Just that whole the self-awareness.
So we talked about the last time I did first of all, I wanted being perfect timing because the episode launched and now a week later, Motor Trend has finally shut off all the TV shows. And so Ding Dong, the Witch is dead. It took them fucking long enough. I have no love lost for that brand or the company or basically anyone in it.
Why don't you tell us what you really think?
I don't have to because there are other members of that team who have been telling the world what that person thinks for how many years has it been since I left? And I've just laughed the entire time. I'm not going to stoop to any of that. More importantly, I just don't think Motor Trend was putting out content that was relevant or interesting. And I think the world agreed. And now finally someone at Motor Trend was paying attention and thought, why are we spending all this money when no one watches us and no one cares and this stuff is not compelling? So I don't have to shit on them. They did a fair job of shitting on themselves.
The trash takes itself out.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted being perfect timing, but what happened was we did a couple months ago now, we did that, the Tesla Model 3 versus M3, BMW M3 CS drag race. And it was just a shit show. We did a whole episode on that where I was just so beaten down by all of the comments, getting personal and political that I just thought, fuck this. I'm just out. I'm not doing any more Teslas. And I, half tempted to not even do new cars anymore. So then the opportunity came up where it was it all. I might have even talked about it at the time. I was talking to Anthony Esposito, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I really think the Model 3 eliminates the need for an M3. Like it's just not. It's today's BMW 3 Series, and he just flat out wouldn't listen to me. Wouldn't even consider this whole thing. My boss was like, "You suck. There's no way that electric piece of shit. I hate Elon." Okay. Everyone hates. He didn't say he hates Elon, but it was just he had very much
implicit
anti-EV stance. And so it started a number of debates where I would say to people like, I need to get the cars together, but I kind of think that if I got the cars together, I don't know the outcome of this, but it could very well be Tesla Model 3, where the last Model 3 performance, not even in the same league as BMW. And so every time, what I noticed was every time this conversation started, there was a huge amount of disbelief, and I didn't know the actual answer. So we said, fuck it. We called Tesla and said, hey, can you guys give us a performance? And BMW shipped us, I think they flew over a 2025 M3, which has got an LCI, life cycle impulse update.
So they sent the Tesla down with a handler who actually knows a thing about cars.
Yep. He was great. I mean, this is a totally new world for Tesla. So, I mean, they've had for many, many years no press fleet and no marketing and media department and no one to help you. And so, guys like the Throttle House who did a track test on the Model 3 Performance had no factory support.
Throttle House, which you also mentioned in your episode.
We did. We had to because we were 3 days away from filming. I think it was like 3 days away from filming, and their video comes out, and Thomas, with his like amazing towering voice, is like, I really do think that if anyone took this car to do a track day at Willow Springs, they would end up in a lethal accident. And I heard that line, and I took my phone and I recorded it, and I texted to Anthony, and he was like, I'm recording the same fucking thing and sending it to you right now. We obviously have to build that into the episode. But they had huge, like corner 3, Thomas got a warning that said brake temperature overheat. Now,
where were they?
They were in Toronto.
At a
or
track.
In Ontario somewhere, wherever they are in Canada. They did a track test on it. And when I tested the Model 3 performance for the drag race episode, I got the same warning, at the end of the quarter mile testing, which I occasionally will have cars that will overheat brakes because as soon as I hit the quarter mile mark, I am full ABS. Depends on which direction, but if I'm going opposite track direction, it's...
Yes, because there's a sharp corner there that you would like to not do at 125 miles an hour.
I couldn't if I want. I would like to be able to, but I can't. So it's really hard on the brakes because then I stop, effectively turn around and run in the other direction. And so I got the warning and I thought nothing of it. So we get there and Icons and all of our shows is scripted. Everyone knows this. And typically it comes from me spending time with the cars. But in this case, I'd driven both of the cars. So there's a lot of things that I can pre-write based on my impressions of the cars and then adjust on site. If maybe the Model 3 isn't quieter than in my mind, it's quieter inside than the BMW is. Maybe it's not, right? So we can fix little things like that. But the big stuff we can't fix. And we just...
Change. You can't change.
You can't really change,
yes,
right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we can't really pre-write if we don't know the sort of big things like lap times, right?
Sure.
So we went in and I was on the defensive writing that script. It was very much like, I'm going to call everyone out for prejudging these cars. And the analogy I came up with was this is like trying to convince somebody that their religion's better than yours or yours is better than theirs. Mine lets me marry 5 broads. How many people can you marry? Like this is all fucking ridiculous. I'm not going to change your religious beliefs based on logical things. And so I called everyone out. I'm like, you've already made up your goddamn mind. I use the term dick bags. I'm like, you dick bags have already made up your mind. We bleeped it. But we went into this thing fully convinced that the brakes were going to fail on the Tesla. So, I pulled Randy aside and I make him watch the Throttle House video. And he's like, oof. And I'm like, all right, so you've been warned. It's Randy Popst. Randy, do what you got to do. Just drive around whatever brake thing you find out. Oh, and also, instead of your normal out lap, like warm up, 2 hot laps and a cool down.
It's 15 minutes.
You're going out for 15 minutes. So pay attention to those brakes. And he was like, okay, it's Randy. He's like, all right, you can always tell when brakes are starting to heat up and I'll just throttle it down and we'll do what we can. Tesla handler comes over and it was like, oh, by the way, we have a new endurance mode. What? Now, I didn't know this. So now we have to do a stand up and write this whole thing in script. And we don't know what that. I'm like, what does it do? And he's like, well, it cuts power at high speeds, not coming out of a corner, but the faster you go, the less benefit there is to lap times to accelerate from 112 to 118. But what we want is the feeling of being in a fast car and the ability to rocket off a corner. And that's what gets you the best times. So we sort of limit very high speed power, start to throttle it back so that we can have the system be more thermally stable so it can last for a whole track session. And I'm like, how long is a track session? And they're like, well, here probably 15 minutes. Thought, okay, even with Randy driving? And they're like, we'll find out. Okay. So that happens. And he overhears me talking to Randy about the brake warning. And I'm like, I need you to just ignore them. Because what I noticed in the Throttle House video and on my own is that the warning would come and go and come and go and come and go, which tells me that you're not consistently over some temperature threshold. It's just spiking.
Momentarily spiking.
Yeah. Tesla boy comes over and is like, we fixed that. And I'm like, did you? My natural skepticism of all things. I'm like, really? And he was like, that wasn't real. Okay. So he didn't use those terms. But basically what someone in the team had done is estimated brake pad temperature and rotor temperature based on decel Gs, load put into the system for the stock brakes on stock non-performance brakes with stock non-performance pads with the closed wheels. So it's like a worst case scenario.
Yes. They've been very conservative.
Yeah. And they forgot / didn't have time / didn't think or somebody, whatever. They never adjusted it for the performance brakes, which are fucking massive and now have really aggressive brake pads on them and open wheels with a lot more cooling. So he's like, you're not going to get the warning. And we're like, oh, so Randy, if you got the warning, just ignore it. Car was spectacular. We were like, shit, We did, however.
So you had to rewrite the script a little.
Where that whole part of the script was blank. I mean, we had no idea what was going to happen. We did, however, pre-write the segment where Randy is sitting in the car and on the screen watching the Throttle House video. And then when Thomas says a lethal accident, we do the slow down, lethal accident. And then while that's happening, we do the Hitchcock push-pull thing. And he just like, and then we start cross-fading in the pictures of him crashing his actual Tesla Model 3 Pikes Peak racer car. It was fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was really epic.
You like that?
Yeah,
it's good. I love
very
that.
well done.
Randy saying "fuck it," like I put it in the script, and he's like, "Oh man, why do you make me swear like this?" I'm like, it's like Grandpa saying "fuck." Like there's just something about Randy saying
the improbability. It's like in that scene in Airplane when you have Barbara Billingsley speaking jive, right?
Exactly.
It's just the improbability that makes it comedic.
Yep. Or the nun where the guy offers her a drink, like his little flask, and she says, "Certainly not." And then does a line of coke off a mirror. Yeah. Randy saying that is just the most ridiculous. We fucking laughed our asses off. The other thing that Randy is so naturally funny. Like the facial expressions. If you guys haven't watched the video, please just watch the scene.
Yeah, Randy really came into his own as a presenter for the first time.
He is so fucking funny. And, when he's in the car watching the video, we have a camera on him and he's like, like Anthony told him, like, the audience doesn't necessarily know that you're at Willow Springs, even though you could see it says Streets of Willow right behind you.
Yes, I noticed that it said Willow in the background when he's watching it. And I was sure that was intentional.
Yeah, for sure. But you got to drive it. Like, comedy has to be crystal clear. So, like, when, if somebody else would get Streets of Willow and Randy looks directly at the camera and goes, like, right here, it's so funny. But the one thing he had, that was all scripted, and he just added his own, like, hilarious Grinch-like facial expressions to this, cartoonish. The one that he got the entire crew to almost have to sit down was at the beginning. I opened it. I said, so, the opener of the episode is, I'm not going to get you to change your religious beliefs, so I wouldn't even try. I wouldn't be able to do it, so I'm not going to even try. We're going to go agnostic on powertrain here. And we're just going to answer a bunch of questions. And it's like, which one is faster on a hot lap? Which one can both of the cars endure a 15-minute session without overheating? Blah, 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 blah. And finally, we come back to me after that voiceover. And finally, which one should you buy? Randy, who's off-site, and his only lines were like, oh God, he went there. Like he was he plays the voice
foil,
of the foil and the voice of the audience. Like, oh my God, did he go there, right? We want Randy to say that. And I say, so which car should you buy? And he just fucking unprovoked comes out with, well, it depends on whether you're a right-wing, a left...
a libtard.
A left-wing libtard or a right-wing nutcase.
Nut job.
I almost fell over. I so wish we had the camera rolling. We were practicing. And like the one thing I had to tell him is like, don't ever do that to me again when the cameras aren't rolling. Because I let out this like mezzo-soprano squeal of hysteria. Of course, everyone else started laughing. So the scene would have been fucked up anyway. But we would have had the audio of me like, I was hysterical. And of course, Anthony's like, we can't use the word libtard. And I'm like, probably can't. We could bleep it. And Randy's like, they use it all the time on the news. I'm like, but he's like, I'm not taking sides. Like Randy, much like we're not going to ever talk about our political beliefs. Doesn't matter. But he got bold. It was so good. Randy has gotten so funny on camera. He's always funny off camera, by the way.
Yes.
He just keeps getting better and better and better on camera. But to watch him like give commentary while he's setting the M3 did a 120 lap, which is literally Ferrari fast, and he's one-handed.
Yes, like he's often driving one-handed. We had him out doing. We'll talk about this next episode. We had him out setting a lap for us, and we were watching the video back, and we were like, he's driving a substantial portion of this lap with one hand.
He does. His method is called the pull-down steering method. So he never pull. He keeps his hands at 93, 180 degrees apart. But before a turn, he lifts up, like on a right-hand turn, he goes from 3 o'clock to like noon and then pulls down with that arm and then has the other arm ready to pull it back. And then we'll go to two hands on a slide if he needs to. It's just the technique that he's done. If you think about how you tend to drive, if you start at 9 and 3, it's a little bit awkward to go up.
Yeah, if you need to provide, it depends on how fast the steering ratio is of the car in question and how tight the corner is.
Yeah. But you're typically using the pull down arm anyway, and he just sort of shortcuts that. And he's Randy, he can do whatever he wants.
That's right. That's the actual answer.
But it's just wild to watch him set these laps at like this genuinely like holy shit speed, and just he's talking, he's like, oh man, if I fucked up that entry, yeah, you lost to 0.000003 seconds on that. It was pretty wild though. Very, very unusually, his second lap on the M3 was faster than his first. That is so unlike him. Either tires needed to warm up or he just didn't realize how much power often it'll take him a lap or so to realize how much power a car can put down and how good the all-wheel drive system is. And in that car, the M3, the four-wheel drive sport mode is so good that you can get it sideways if you want, but if you need it to be sort of surgically precise, neat, you can do it. And he probably just figured that out in lap 2. But it was pretty cool to see that the Tesla's peak speeds didn't change for 8 laps at all. It was the 9th lap that
where it was
went into
down.
thermal, meaning, started to actually throttle back. But at that point it was 13 minutes and 58 seconds or something, like at that point you're about to get the checker at the end of your 20-minute. So I did a 15-minute thing because most HPDEs will do a 20-minute session. But
that's from first car out to last car in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So you really only get 12 to 15 minutes hot. And I thought, okay, 15, let's do that. But so you've driven M3?
Only on the drag strip.
Okay. I wish you had driven more because this was fascinating. I went into this expecting the BMW to win. So the questions were
the entire Comparo?
The entire Comparo. So question one, and again, this was like, we can't convince anyone that an EV works for other people if they hate them, and fine, if you don't like it, don't buy it, whatever, fuck off. But I do need to answer this question from a journalistic perspective. Like, is this car actually a substitute for an M3? Right? So question number one was, which is faster around a racetrack? I'm not sure how relevant that is, but these cars do have racetrack
competence, intent.
So, right, intent, I guess. So, okay, sure, 1.54 seconds. The M3 is quicker than the Tesla. The fascinating part is looking very closely at the V-Box data, and for more than half of the track, so from start-finish line, because it's flying start, to the entry of the bowl, the cars traded positions 6 times, and were within 6/100ths of a second of each other going into the bowl. I mean, that's within the resolution of the 20 hertz V-Box. So they are dead the fuck nuts identical.
And then Signore Pirelli si presenta.
Mr. Pirelli has made himself known. That's what Derek just said. By the end of that long right-hander, the Tesla's grip fell off visibly on the chart and never recovered. And so even though it's...
Because it's on Pirelli's.
I don't want to be that. That's unfair to Pirelli. Because it's on Pirelli's, that are optimized for rolling resistance with some sporting capability. I think it's only fair to say these are low rolling resistance Tesla specific tires that are not PZ4 off the shelf. For whatever reason, these tires just gave up on life. And I will say, yes, Tesla has some serious range requirements for this car, but if they can't even last a half a lap, and they were brand new, both cars had brand new tires, we put brand new tires on and sent them out. If they can't last a half a lap, fuck off. I mean, just fuck right off. And it's not a very abusive track on cars. We've typically seen Pirellis, like Trofeo Rs, have one really fast hero, we call them a hero lap in them, and then really degrade. This was something I've not seen. This car lost 1.5 seconds in 4 corners. I mean, and by the way, on the straight, the Tesla was actually quicker. The Tesla came off the corner quicker, and then the acceleration traces were dead even. So it was able to start accelerating a little bit sooner, and then they were dead nuts even. So you have a car that was exactly the same speed in a straight line, lost 1.5 seconds in 4 corners. It's nuts. So that was interesting. So they're effectively tied. If they were on the same tires, they'd be tied. And then in the 15 minutes, it was, a total, it was... So in endurance mode, I think it was 3 seconds behind the BMW instead of 1.5. And then it just gradually, in lap 13, it lost another 1.5 seconds. So
minute 15. 13, minute 13, not lap 13.
Yep. It was lap 9. Yes, I'm sorry. So it did 8th lap 9. Anyway, so those were interesting. We did not expect that. I mean, we went into this.
Yeah, you
again,
thought the brakes were going to just sort of give up, and it was going to be just a.
I mean, I wrote a whole segment about the brake size on the Tesla, and this is familiar from the last one, and we had to throw the whole thing out. Good. I mean, we're not going to do the Top Gear thing, which got them sued by Tesla years ago for just saying, well, the thing died when it didn't, right? And we had to throw the whole thing out, which is a pain in the ass. I was up until midnight that night after starting at 4 a.m. and then starting the next day at 4 a.m., rewriting the script because, oh, shit. Like, we were genuinely shocked. Next question was, which one is better to live with on a daily basis? And BMW was like, hey, the newest version of iDrive is in the 3 Series. And I said, well, it went from D- to F now. You guys suck. That iDrive sucks. There's so many things about that car, and I didn't do a great job explaining this in the video. There's so many things about that car that are so style over substance that I can't fucking stomach them. Starting with the enormous wart in the middle of the seat. That is a carbon fiber ball rest. It's a scrotal rest. There's no reason you don't need support. And Randy joked in this, I put it in the script. Well, even I don't even know if it was in, or he did that. It was in the episode. It was in the episode. I said, it wasn't the script. Who needs support in between your legs? And he goes, I do. And then I wanted to make an old man joke. I'm like, well, whatever. And I just thought, too much, too far. But you don't need support in between your legs. That's helping you keep your legs apart. What you do need is support on one way or the other. It's just dumb, and it makes the seats uncomfortable to deal with. And the infotainment is the other really great example because someone must have looked and saw, oh, well, the M stripes are at an angle. So on the screen, let's take all of the graphical elements and make everything match that M angle. And as such, there's no real estate to do anything with.
Yeah, because they've just thrown away entire corners of the...
Yeah, and you can move stuff around. It's one of these systems that I get crucified by the car companies when I really pan them and say, people get used to them. First of all, you can get used to being abused. That doesn't mean it's right or that it's pleasurable. Unless you're into that sort of thing. Or a good idea, right? Or even consensual, right? But you can get used to it. You shouldn't have to, number one. And I was very happy to see that, in the Tesla system, you get used to very quickly, and then it just becomes really intuitive. And I just was reading a report on Model 3, ID Buzz, I think it was, from Chubba, who was the ex-editor-in-chief of Car and Driver. And I don't remember what car it was, and he said, no, it was Model 3 Performance. He was saying that he, in 2 hours with the Model 3, was more comfortable than with the infotainment system than he is after 2 years of interacting with his ID4. Right? There you have it, right? You can get used to it. I'm sure he's gotten used to it, but it's still a pain in the ass. And that BMW system is F. It's just a fucking fail. And the Tesla's is an A. Right? So there's that. And then you get the seats are more comfortable in the Tesla. They just supportive? No, but they're comfortable. The driving position is similar between the two cars. The sound level is similar between the two cars. Tesla feels a little quieter. It just becomes an easy thing to live with. You get in and out of it. It's got all of this functionality on the app. It's got features nothing else has, like dings when a light turns green. It has obstacle-aware acceleration. So if you slam on the brakes and something's right in front of you, it'll delay the response and slow it down to give you a chance to slam on the brakes. I mean, you start to lay out, and I think I had 38 of them that we just didn't have time to put in the script, of like features that no other car has that are just really little things that wind up being helpful. And so the Tesla crucifies the BMW as just a car to live with. And that's before you factor in cost per mile of operating, turbo lag.
Cost per mile for buying, too.
Well, we haven't gotten there yet, right? But, Randy did nothing but bitch the entire time about the turbo lag on the BMW. Mm-hmm. And it was partially because we were between 2,000 and 6,000 feet of elevation the whole time, but also because we did one of the other challenges was a drift challenge. And it wasn't even started as a challenge. It was like, let's go have fun. And I'm in the Tesla, just complete opposite lock, laughing my ass off the entire time. And he's on the radio I can't fucking keep up with him. And so there's a part of the thing where he's like, I can't keep up with him because he's got 4-wheel drive and I'm in 2-wheel drive mode to do these drifts. I'm going to 4-wheel drive sport. That was real. He was pissed off that he's nicest guy in the world. He's a racer. He gets really competitive. And when that idiot over there, that discount Sandler, can outdrive him around the track, he's fucking mad. And we've had this happen a couple times. We're like, Randy, it's in the script. It's fine. Like, this car's slower. You need to not keep up. Not in his lexicon. So he got pissed and he put it in 4-wheel drive sport mode and still couldn't keep up with me, and then couldn't slide it anywhere nearly as well as I could slide the Tesla around. And Randy Popst is an SCCA Hall of Fame race car driver. I'm not going to even insinuate that I'm in the same league of driving with him, but I'm maybe 2% better at drifting than he is. But this was night and day. Like, this was, I'm coming into a corner on trail braking, a little flick opposite direction, and then huge full opposite lock slides the whole way up the other side of the thing. And he's coming in, and you see him fighting it. He's trying to, the BMW
provoke
just
the car to get it upset.
Wouldn't get
it
sideways on turn in, and it just fought him. And then on the radio, this fucking lag, it's only 2,800 feet of elevation. So Tesla crucifies the BMW in the sort of drift thing. And then we swapped cars, and he was like, oh, this is cake. And I, of course, couldn't keep up with him, but I didn't care. And then, so Tesla wins drift and fun challenge. BMW wins lap time. BMW wins consistency. Tesla wins usability. And then we get so they're tied basically now. And the sort of final question we wanted to know, and this is, I didn't know the answer to it, which is more fun on a back road. And so everyone immediately is like, oh, BMW, because it makes noise. Okay, so we get out on these back roads, and I drove the Tesla like an asshole on a back road. I don't think Randy had much of an opportunity to do it, but he's driving this car really fast. Like, the road was closed. We have police officers with us. This is all above the board. Really fast. And he had the realization that he was like, the fun actually doesn't come from what the car can do. The fun comes from having just gotten away with it, right? And we agreed fully on that. And if you go back and watch the video,
which car?
The M3.
Yeah,
BMW. They're both effectively as capable as one another. The BMW is probably a little bit more so because the front end is a little bit stiffer, and the car just feels a little bit more. You feel a little more connected to it, even though the Tesla has better steering feel. They're sort of, it's within the mix, like they're really close to each other. But his point was, it's not fun by virtue of its capability. It's fun by getting away with it, but also it's the noise that's missing. And we cut this out for length. The M3 was deafening in the car, and he was hanging out at 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 RPM the whole way, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 RPM the whole time. And it's all fake. Mm-hmm. There is no straight six in the world that is in any modern car that's that fucking loud when you're not on it. It's like simulated intake noise when you're just cruising. And I was just like, are you really? So the sound is what we're missing, and it's all fake anyway? I'm sorry. The Tesla might not be the type of car that I'm going to get up on a Sunday morning and go for a mountain drive in, but neither is this turbocharged, computer controlled, automatic transmission, four-wheel drive, isolation chamber,
4,000 pounds
with fake straight six noise piped in. Like, if that's going to be the case, so my line out of that whole thing was, tell me you wouldn't be having more fun in a Miata. Like, that was what we put in the script, and then the rest of it, like, I was just going to say that. And he's like, I'd rather be having more fun in a Miata. And that's someone who really does. He was on the fence about that. He was he's like, yeah, but power, But I'm like, yeah, but really? So the outline was supposed to be like, wind rustling through our thinning hair, like two old men in a car. And then, of course, the silver. So, but the cars are effectively tied going into the finale. And then the final decision was easy. And that was, of course, mine. That decision was mine. It was just not even a contest, because when you can buy a Model 3 and instead of a M3 comp xDrive and save $70,000. Like, it's literally more than twice the price. And so we had a Miata and a GR86 there as the two cars that you could buy. You could have a GR86 as a track car, and you could have a Miata as a purpose-built sports car, because we wanted to put that in new cars perspective.
Yeah.
But the reality is, had we not needed those cars to drive around and we were in the middle of nowhere, whatever, I would have just brought in a $9,000. Give me a Porsche that's $70,000, right? $70,000, it's an Aston Martin V8 Vantage. That's, insert enormous. It's a Ferrari Mondial. It's a 348, right? Mm-hmm. There's all of these cars. You could have 2 Lotus Elises, 3 of them.
10 E36 M3s.
Right. $70,000. There's not, I'm sorry, this was just such a slam dunk fucking win for the Tesla. That Tesla for daily driver costs less to insure, costs less to buy, costs less to drive, costs less to run. And then 70 grand left over. And then you can actually take something on a mountain road on a weekend and have a real experience versus this from the speakers. Goodbye. It's over for the M3. Just completely over. And that was really a surprise. Because I really kind of thought, all right, Tesla's never going to work on track. It's going to suck to drift. And it can't do the sport sedan thing. So I say, yeah, it makes a better daily driver. But if you need one car, that originally the script said, if you need one car that has to do it all, it's got to be the M3. Well, now the Tesla can do it all too. Shit. So fascinating.
Well, that's a huge advance for them. Huge step forward for Tesla to bring a product.
Massive. That's
compelling.
That's the king. The M3 is the king, undefeated since E36.
Okay, but why? I know why. You only chose there's two cars. There's two presenters. You can only have two cars there.
Not true.
Okay, so what about CT4 Blackwing?
Cadillac refused to participate.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
really?
That was supposed to be in the episode. We wanted a CT4V Blackwing.
Because I think it addresses some of the complaints you have about the M3.
Yeah, it does. I don't know if it does car. So I don't think it does car as well as 3 Series does, right? Much smaller back seat. It's not as well built. It's not, it's probably a nicer interior than the Tesla. I'd have to put them together because the new one is plain, but it's at least fine now.
Yeah, sure.
CT4V Blackwing would have been the wild card. And
with a manual, right? If you get a manual and you get something that's that fun dynamically.
I probably would have had the automatic just for fairness because the BMW
in terms of pace.
Yeah. However, and actually I like the CT4 Blackwing with an automatic quite a lot. I wouldn't buy one because my personal preferences, but I really wanted Blackwing there. And I'm very disappointed that Cadillac didn't want to participate. But hey, we tried and I wasn't about to go rent one. It's just, a 15-minute lapping session would have then meant we have to buy them tires. We have to buy them brakes. It's just, it becomes a very, very
involved
different thing. Yeah, very expensive thing. And there's risk involved, right? We don't want to ball up someone's car. A press car exists to be tested in this way. So, that was funny that you bring up Blackwing. That was disappointing.
Yeah, to me, that is the benchmark. It remains one of the best sports sedans I've ever driven, having not driven a lot of modern ones. But I was really impressed by that car. It does all of this sort of, there's enough old car ethos in that car to make it genuinely fun.
Yeah, I think so. I don't love the V6.
Yeah, of course. Everyone always says this, and it is 100% true that it would be better with an NA V8.
Oh my God, I'd own one. I probably would have bought one, and the same horsepower and everything. But they did make
470 horsepower naturally aspirated V8 would be just with similar gearing.
It would have been that would be the world's best follow up to an E90 M3. Basically, a small block isn't quite a BMW S65, but it's.
Yeah, but you have this. You get this other character instead of that, right? Instead of this sort of 8200, 8250 or whatever it is RPM V8, you get this sort of like America, big balls kind of motor.
Yeah, the small block makes the best noises in the business. Yeah. Period. So in the V8 crossplane business, I should say. But it was. I wish we had a Cadillac there. We talked about Giulia Quadrifoglio, but I just think it's
getting long in the tooth.
It's done now, but it's also just not on track. It's not great. And that was one of the last videos we did at Motor Trend, and it's that long ago. It was 8 years ago. There was nothing else. But CT4 would have been great. I have no interest in the current M3. I respect it. I think it's a really good car. Again, with the lights. It's a really good car. It's a really good M5 in that it sort of does everything well. And it's a really great executive transportation solution. But
for the people that don't have to deal with the front seats.
Well, those in BMW's defense, the seats are optional, right? The base seats are fine. But that's how BMW NA chose to spec the car. It was $113,000, I think was the price sticker on it. And I just, no. And even a base M3 manual rear drive, we couldn't compare a rear drive M3 to an all-wheel drive performance, so we had to get the xDrive. just no. Again, simulated. It's not a good manual. I should say not a great manual. It's fine. It really highlights that engine's lag, which you don't notice with the automatic
unless you're Randy Pobst.
until you're trying to drift it.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't bother him racing, actually hot lapping, but it really did fuck with him on the street and especially trying to drift it. And so, yeah. Interesting story.
Yeah, and you have not been or have been crucified in the comment section by the internet at large? A little bit, but not as bad as last time.
No, and I think part of it was that just going in and just right off the bat being like, shut the fuck up, everyone, right? We actually recorded a scene. We don't ever have stuff sit on the editing room floor. It's very rare, like anything big. But we did a whole scene where I just looked straight to camera and I'm like, you all need to stop politicizing this shit. Right? If you don't want this car, that's fine, but it doesn't mean it can't work for someone else. And don't tell them what will work for them. And don't think for a second that the government isn't already telling you what you're going to drive, right? Stop being stupid. This is a comparison test between this car and that car. And we're not going to look at charging infrastructure and we're not going to look at all this other shit. We're just going to say, we're going to ask a bunch of questions and fucking answer them. And there's no preconceived notion at all. Of course, I'm lying, there was, but we adjusted on the site. So the net result is I'm just doing a test and that's it. And when we were watching, actually when we were recording it, Anthony, he sort of edits everything in his head. We're watching. He's like, we don't need this. And I'm like, well, let's record it so we have it. And watching it back, it just was like preachy from me.
Sure.
Just didn't.
I think you got where you needed to go already with the way that you started the episode off.
Yeah, and with the comedy did it enough, and I didn't need to be on the defensive. But we had it in case like it just didn't work. And we thought about putting it in the credits, but we just think it was just such a. There are some things we didn't do the best job of explaining. For example, when we got back to the house after filming the track day and I had to redo the whole script, Anthony was like, you can't actually take the Model 3 to a track. Like, how are you going to charge it? And I said to him, I'm giving the win to like the BMW. However, this is absolutely, they are going to be tied on the endurance thing because it can do it. And he was like, no, there's no charger. I said, is that the fucking fault of the car? Or is that the charging infrastructure at the track that's missing? Because let's think about this. After the 15-minute session, the M3 had a half a tank.
Yes, but if you're an individual making a purchasing decision, it is a material factor.
That is not the fault of the car.
Right, but
it's
it is
the fault of the infrastructure. Right. It is. Some tracks have superchargers on them. In that case, go ahead. I mean, there was a fucking, last HPDE that you were at, there was a BMW i5 M50 electric car there. There's no fucking, somebody did it. He did the whole day. I don't know how, but he did it. But I just can't, so I put the line in, obviously, like if there's charging infrastructure at the track, the car can do it. But as a journalist, I'm not reviewing your local racetracks, and Tesla's willingness to install a supercharger there.
Yes.
I have to look at the car itself.
But a consumer will.
A consumer will. But then that whole thing was negated anyway by the fact that you're saving so much money. You could go buy a track car. Oh, and a sports car, right? And so,
sure.
Who's going to track an M3? Like, I'm sorry. Even if you have $112,000 to spend on an M3, which I think is a genuinely asinine purchase, then you're going to go spend $3,000 a weekend on tires, and then God knows how much those carbon ceramics cost to replace because they're going to fucking wear out and break it. It's almost $10,000. I don't know. Like, it is such an absurd car to run, a 4,100 pound, 500 horsepower car.
On any recurring basis. If you own the car and you're like, I would like to see what it's like, and you go out once. Right?
And we also did talk in the episode about the M executives having to admit that they build in compromises. That was actually about an M5, but it was 4%. I think the quote, I found it somewhere. It was like 4% of M5 owners will track their car once. That's it. And so there's a lot of compromises built into these cars for the inevitability of something that isn't inevitable. Like it's
easily evitable.
Evitable. Yeah. And if you have $160,000 to spend on an M5, probably won't flinch at spending $12,000 on somebody's shitty Miata track rat, because that's what it's going to cost you to do brakes on your M5 when you're done.
Yep. Totally agree. That's the reason why I show up at a track day in my $4,000 GTI and, I'm not out there in my late Model X unless, I would maybe take each car that I buy, if it had some sporting intent, I would take it to the track once just to see how it is.
I want to. We've talked about this. I want to do this for my birthday one year, just rent out like Thunder Hill or something, but I won't do a full weekend or a full day in like the Mercedes. Like I go do a session. I do a session in the 850 CSI, but this is the reason why my Lotus Elise sat in the garage while Beatrice goes to the track because brakes on Beatrice are, I don't know, $300
That is the
for pads.
ultimate luxury, is a shitbox that is sort of could be disposable if needed.
Right. And if you can save $70,000. I mean, $40K base to base.
Sure.
Come on, comparably equipped, xDrive, whatever. Just crazy. Tesla has fucking dethroned the M3, and I genuinely didn't think that was possible. Much less likely, or I didn't think it was even remotely possible. And of course, the haters. Fine, I would never drive that EV.
Well, then don't.
Don't. I just because I can microwave a turkey faster doesn't mean I want it. What the fuck does that? Go drift that thing around. I'm telling you, when Randy Popes is bitching that the M3 is a pain in the ass to drift and the Tesla's great, this is not about microwaving a fucking turkey. And I know if you want your ugly kidney grills, I didn't even say a word about that stupid fucking face on that M3. Mm-hmm. There's a million other things with the brand equity. There's also making the political statement of driving an Elon machine around. Now, a lot of people who love their Teslas but don't like the fact that they're associated with Elon. Great, don't buy one. Or put a bumper sticker on it that says, fuck Elon. whatever. But it doesn't mean somebody else can't like the car, and it doesn't mean the car can't work. And that's,
yeah.
There were I had a couple people on Instagram start. The one guy I just bitch slapped from upside down. He deleted the comment and apologized. Thought that was great. Another guy who I called him this was interesting. I called him a narcissistic fucking sociopath, and the algorithm slapped me on the wrist because I was actually on a plane, and it was like every 8 seconds my phone lit up with a comment. And as soon as I called him a fucking sociopath, stopped. Like it was clear no one was seeing this post, and it lasted for like 12 hours. Mm-hmm. But it was this guy saying, fuck you, Cammisa, basically go back to reviewing. We don't all live in San Francisco, but go back to reviewing Dinos and whatever else. And then I read that and I was like, don't tell me what to do. Like, fuck you. Like, I'm a journalist, whatever. And then I keep reading, and he was doubling down. Every time somebody jumped in on him, he just would double down even further. And he was like, he should never be reviewing these cars. And I'm like, I just wrote back. I'm like, the fact that you're sitting here saying that I shouldn't do my job as a journalist to test two different cars because you don't like one of them means you're acting like a fucking sociopath, narcissistic sociopath. It's not about you. If you don't like one, don't fucking buy one. But like, that means you don't like it. So therefore I don't want to even hear about it. The world doesn't work that way, buddy. So I keep waiting for him to chime back in, and he shut up after that. Either that or the algorithm just never told him that I said something, but like, unfollow me, just go ahead, goodbye. Like I said, you are the problem, right? This is exactly the problem from that last episode where everyone's personal beliefs about, I like this, therefore good, I hate this, therefore bad, and don't you dare tell me about it is just stupid. So.
Well, as I have said before, we live in a post-fact world, facts world, so welcome, come on in. Yeah. We have no choice.
Anyway, have not heard from Tesla yet. My $525,600 check from Elon did not clear
because you made it yourself,
and I gave it back in the episode. A lot of people caught that reference. So did you get that reference?
No.
Oh, okay. So when I was making the check, I was in Photoshop, and I had to put a dollar amount in. I'm like, you can't write like $1 million check probably, but like 500,000. And I'm like,
why not? I mean, for your episode, you just didn't think $1 million was
just thought
suitable?
It would look stupid. I was trying to come up with a dollar. It was like 10 o'clock at night the night before we were shooting. And I'm like, I need to just print out a check. So I did $525,000. And, I signed it Elon with a little heart on it, which made me laugh. Like Elon would sign it that way. Printed it out, and I'm like cutting it up to make it look like a check. And I'm like, hang on a second. 525,600 minutes is the amount of minutes in a year.
Yeah.
And it was a song from from Rent, which I never saw.
Yeah, but I've heard the
but
song.
I know the song because it was remixed like probably inappropriately because I think Rent was all about people dying of AIDS. And it was like this like super fucking happy dance mix that I knew. So I just changed it to $525,600.01. And a lot of people commented on it. We're like, oh my God, are you a Rent fan? The one that made me burst out laughing on the plane actually was, is that a Rent check? I was like, oh God, I didn't even think about that. Like, yeah, no, not a Rent fan, but it was just, if you're going to make a number up, put another little Easter egg in there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Alas.
the world is still on. Are you going to continue reviewing new cars, or was this the final?
Probably. And we're talking about what's on for next year. And there's so few things that are interesting that I don't know. I don't know. Maybe when they're
interesting to see the return of the tread-to-tread formula. So I mean, it's been a while since you've done a comparison between two cars. So that was, it's a new.
We often do.
Genre. You're right, but
it's all in the sort of icons land.
Yes, it's embedded in a larger narrative. Story, yeah.
And so this was easier to write. Right. In some ways, it was not to. Like Buzz was a pain in the ass to write this narrative of 7 years of history.
It's so expansive. Yeah.
The P-episode was a fucking nightmare. But this is just a very simple thing. Like we establish tests, we see what the winner is, whatever. It is almost as much work as an Icons in terms of pre-production and whatnot, because I do have to go drive the cars and I do have to pre-write most of the script, and we have to have at least, if we don't know the answer for each one, the beats, we have to know where it goes. And so maybe next year, if there's, we love lap battle. So like tread to tread, we called it that once. We're not going to do that again. So that was Cammisa's ultimate comparo. We sort of like leaning into the ultimate thing because we have Cooter, Cammisa's ultimate drag race replay. And we're like, okay, well, let's just have ultimate drag race, ultimate comparo, ultimate lap battle. And so I think we have this bucket of budget for next year where we could do an Icons or we could do one of the Ultimate Series videos. And if car companies are a pain in the ass to deal with, they don't want to lose, so they don't want to be in comparisons. But if we can get, like if I get a ZR1 Corvette, like the new ZR1, yeah, hello GM if you're listening, of course I'll do an Ultimate Drag Race replay and an Ultimate Lap Battle and probably Ultimate Camaro if we can have the car long enough to do it. Why the fuck not blow it out? Like this is a really important, big, interesting car. But most of the crap that's coming out is just
uninspiring.
Clarkson said it best.
Yeah.
No, modern cars are just shit. And I can't tell the difference and I don't care. That's kind of, sure.
I've felt that way for a long time, but
You were wrong for a long time.
Yes. My standards for texture are different from most people's.
We are looking back in history now, 2000 to 2010 cars, and we're looking at them fondly. As we often do, look back in cars that maybe didn't appeal to us in the day when they were very expensive and depreciating, maybe now do. I don't think we're ever going to look back at most of 2020's cars.
There's definitely, it's been cyclical. There was not a lot to draw enthusiasm in the malaise era.
Right. People are looking back at those somewhat fondly now.
Yes, now it's a sort of cultural artifact rather than like an experientially like good artifact.
I think there are certain highlights. M3 is one of them. That car will have a following. That engine that S58 is an absolute monster, and will take 1,000 horsepower. And so there's a future for that car. But there are 5 cars on sale today that are sort of in that like, ooh, this has collectability and this is going to be interesting as we continue to move on. So few that I'm not going to waste. I don't want to use the term waste, but I just don't think I have enough to say about most new cars. We're doing Land Cruiser actually. We're leaving in, I don't know when this airs, but we're filming it as this episode airs, and that's an interesting one. Not because of the car itself, actually,
or the experience it provides,
and certainly not the experience. Well, yeah, but it's more the history of Land Cruiser that. I'm not sure that most American viewers know. And I thought, okay, this is a story we can probably tell. And it's an icon, so we get to, go up in scale and think, all right, let's look at what our expectations are on this vehicle based on its nameplate and go from there and evaluate whether this should be on planet Earth or not. Mm-hmm. But mostly,
yeah.
hate to say. It's all right, I'll take your wagon.
Yep,
that is.
that's what I do. I don't have anything that's less than, I guess the track car is 15 years old, but everything else is like at least 25 years old that I own right now.
Yep. And I think our audience, given the amount of people that come over and talk at Radwood and everywhere else we go, our audience sort of agrees.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Carmudgeon Show. We will see you next week, or I guess you will see us, or you will hear us next week.
See you next
Monday.
Condom.
Okay. Bye.